Goodwill gesture by the Houthis. There are still a lot of issues, a lot of hostilities, and a lot of distrust. Joining me now to provide more insight is Professor William Lawrence. He has more than 30 years of experience working in the Middle East and North Africa and currently lectures at George Washington University. Professor, welcome to the program. So is this enough to restart negotiations between the two sides?
Well, I think the most important change is that the Saudis are in a much weaker position than they have been in recent months. And usually in any conflict situation, if one side suddenly has a weaker position, that actually bodes well for negotiations. The Saudis are under a lot of pressure with the anniversary of the Khashoggi affair, with the attack on their oil facilities, with a number of other conflicts they're involved in. And so the degree to which they can sort of cross Yemen off the list of priorities is an advantage to them. And also, of course, they are battling their UAE comrades in the south with different proxy armies down there. And so anything they can do to lighten the load. And so that's why these prisoner exchanges and these other sort of moves towards negotiations are a good sign.
Well, I think it's interesting that they released these prisoners a day after announcing this major attack inside Saudi Arabia. So this will be the second attack. We had the attack on the oil fields that was blamed on the Iranians inside Saudi Arabia. Now this, where they say they killed or wounded 500 soldiers, captured 2,000 others. How embarrassing is this, Professor, for the Saudi kingdom?
Very embarrassing. But let me first say that the first casualty in war is the truth. And we're seeing a lot of upplaying and downplaying in any conflict, and it's the case here. I think some of the numbers we've heard from the Houthi side are a little bit questionable. And even whether or not these were Saudi troops, I think in some cases they were Yemeni troops that were sort of swept up in the capturing and killing that was going on that are against the Houthis. But leaving aside the facts of the matter, Mohammed bin Salman is probably in a worse position that he's been since he was named Crown Prince, with all of this sort of cacophony of criticism going on, and even his closest allies, the Emiratis, are not with him. So it will be very interesting going forward how much the Saudis are willing to backtrack. But I'll tell you, they won't backtrack all the way for two reasons. Number one is the Houthis hold a lot of Saudi territory, not just with the recent incursions, but going back years now. And there continue to be missile strikes and other operations, drone activity. And so the Crown Prince, however much he backtracks, is going to have to be seen to be defending the kingdom, or his tenure as Crown Prince will be ended.
So much of this conflict is deep-rooted, obviously, in what's going on in Yemen. How catastrophic would a war with Iran be? I think the Saudis realize that's absolutely a zero option to go in that direction. And what are the solutions to end this crisis? I recently sat down with Iran's foreign minister, Javad Zarif. He said the Iranians had presented a 4-point peace plan to the Saudis, and I'm going to quote here what he said exactly. He said Iran had presented a 4-point peace plan. Saudis were too arrogant to accept it. We told them this has to be a political solution, not a military solution, and they did not accept it.
Well, first, let's say that nobody wants a war with Iran, except maybe the hardest line people in U.S. foreign policy establishment and the Israeli foreign policy establishment. Other than those small factions, nobody wants a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Not the Iranians, not the Saudis, not the Americans, not the Trump administration, not the opposition in the U.S. So nobody wants that war. However, everybody wants to inflict pain on the other side, and that's why we've had this asymmetrical game of attacks. I mean, the Iranians attacked the Americans by hitting an unmanned drone, right? They made a huge attack on the oil facilities without killing one individual.
Although they say they were not behind it, just for the record.
Yes, but it couldn't have come from, technologically, it could not have come from Houthi territory. The missiles, their drones is another matter. But so all of that to say that the U.S. has drawn red lines, for example, about killing any Americans. So the Iranians are careful not to kill an American, but still inflict as much pain as they can without escalating to war. And so all this is part of the dance. I think the 12-point plan presented to the Iranians was a dead letter, by Pompeo. I think the 4-point plan presented by the Iranians was a dead letter with the Saudis. And I think all the preconditions people are talking about are non-starters. So what we really need is what Bill Burns did, way back before the Obama administration even got started with the JCPOA, is a back channel discussion with assurances, and the deal to be made is obvious. It's sanctions relief for concessions on nuclear issues, and they have to be focused, not too broad in the initial negotiation.
And unfortunately, civilians are paying the price in this catastrophic war in Yemen. Professor William Lawrence, thank you so much.
Welcome.
And